Annika, for that weather update. To this now, SA Express has been in provisional liquidation for almost a year. Workers have not been paid since March of 2020. The airline has also not taken to the air. The provisional liquidators have asked the Pretoria High Court for a number of extensions so the airline doesn't go into a final liquidation. Well, they've been granted an extension of powers, and ENC's Heidi Giokos caught up with the airline's provisional liquidator, and she joins us now via Skype. Heidi, good morning to you, colleague, and good to have you this morning. I mean, just remind us about SA Express. It went into business rescue and it's still in provisional liquidation.
Yes, most certainly, Tumelo. I think it's important to note that this airline has been in business rescue, and then soon after it went into business rescue, it moved into provisional liquidators. And what the provisional liquidators are trying to do is to completely avoid a final liquidation, because that will mean that the airline loses its permits and its licenses. And that's basically what makes an airline so valuable. So the provisional liquidators have asked time and time again for an extension, and this is to completely avoid a final liquidation. They were also granted an extension of powers, and this allowed them to sell off assets of the airline, to dispose of assets, and to basically give them more powers to try and find a preferred bidder. A preferred bidder was selected last year. FlySax is the preferred bidder, and they need to pay no less than 26 million rand. But we do understand that the provisional liquidators will be in court tomorrow, but we got ahead of ourselves, Tumelo, and we asked the provisional liquidators what their plan is going forward. Let's listen to what one of the provisional liquidators told me.
We are still in provisional liquidation. The terms and conditions of the bid by FlySax was that we, as the joint provisional liquidators, would dispose of the corporal assets or the material assets of the airline, which we have successfully done. I think we've disposed up to about 95% of those assets to the tune of no less than 24 million rand. So the point of departure is that the sale or the selling price is in the amount of 50 million rand. Now, the balance of the purchase price will then be payable in the form of a bank guarantee and on the conclusion of the shares, the sale of shares agreement. So we have not finalized those negotiations, and the implication of a final order would place a risk in regard to the licenses and permits that still exist, which is really the intangible asset that the buyers are buying, as we had sold all the material assets of the airline. So our position at the moment is that we will request at court on the 28th, I think that's Thursday, for a further extension in order to conclude two things: the sale of shares agreement and give an opportunity for the shareholder to consider the contents of that sale of share agreement.
So, Heidi, what then happens if the preferred bidder is unable to meet the required amount to buy the airline?
It's a very key point here, Tumelo, and this is something that I actually asked the provisional liquidator everywhere to try and get a sense of, we're living in tough times. What if the preferred bidder is unable to meet no less than 26 million rand to take over this airline? And from our understanding, it appears as though the airline will then move into final liquidation. And as you heard Avi was speaking, they're trying to avoid that by all means, because there's a lot at stake here. And one must still remember that this is still an SOE, a state-owned entity, and they're moving in uncharted waters, because it's the first time that a state-owned entity is going into provisional liquidation, and it's very difficult. It's a very technical matter. So this is why they've decided to take over this whole process and allow for a preferred bidder, and they wanted a government guarantee from the preferred bidder, but that wasn't possible, and they are satisfied with the fact that they've gone through enough due diligence to ensure that this preferred bidder will pay no less than 26 million rand when this whole thing is over.
So what does it all mean then for the workers? I mean, they've voiced their concerns time and time again.
Yes, indeed, and I think it's critical for government and the Department of Public Enterprises to come in here and provide some kind of clarity for the workers. It's important to note that the workers have not been paid since March of 2020. They've struggled. They've reached out to me time and time again to express their concern. But when I asked the provisional liquidator yesterday, when an airline or any kind of company goes into provisional liquidation, the creditors, including the workers, are basically last on the list to be assisted or to have any kind of financial support in terms of this. So we do understand that the workers have reached out to the Department of Public Enterprises, but because this airline is in the hands of the provisional liquidators, there's very little that they can do. They can only hope that in 3 months' time, when this process is possibly done with, the department will deal with the workers and the situation around that, but also that this new preferred bidder might take over the workers that are currently with SA Express.
All right then, Heidi, that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much for joining us. Well,